Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Dario Fo's play Accidental Death of an Anarchist. Now, this was based on a real event in, I think, 1969, although I'm not 100% sure about that, late 1960s. An anarchist was brought in for questioning by the police in Milan, and he jumped or fell from the window to his death. And so Fo uses this as the basis for his satirical play, Accidental Death of an Anarchist. So one of the things that we will see as we go through is a tremendous amount of satirical critique of the police, of the socially and politically powerful, and corruption. These are really Fo's big targets in the play. So the play starts with Inspector Bertozzo, who is interrogating a maniac. The character is just listed as maniac. Basically, he is a certified lunatic, meaning he has papers that prove that even though he has been impersonating other people, he can't be arrested and held liable for it. So what the maniac says here, very early in the play, is, I have a thing about dreaming up characters and then acting them out. It's called histrionomania. It comes from the Latin histriones, meaning actor. I'm a sort of amateur performance artist, with the difference that I go for theatre verite. My fellow performers need to be real people, but people who don't realize that they're in my plays, which is just as well, because I've got no money and couldn't pay them anyway. I applied to the Arts Council for a grant, but since I don't have political backing... So this is the important setup here. We know almost from the very beginning of the play that the maniac is going to perform. The maniac is going to come up with characters, and he's going to present himself as those people in order to fool others into participating in his plays, his theatre verite. The maniac basically tells Bertozzo that he has performed a ton of different roles. He's been all different kinds of professions. And he knows the law very, very well, because in his time in mental institutions, he has been taught the law by a paranoid law clerk. But the one role he really wants to play is as a judge. Bertozzo asks him, have you ever passed yourself off as a judge? And the maniac says, no, unfortunately, chance never arose. I'd love to, though. Best job in the world. First of all, they hardly ever retire. In fact, just at the point when your average working man at the age of 55 or 60 is already ready for the scrap heap because he's slowing down a bit, losing his reflex, your judge is just coming into his prime. A worker on the line's done for after the age of 50. Can't keep up, keeps having accidents, chuck him out. Your miner has silicosis by the time he's 45, get rid of him, quick, sack him before he sues for compensation. Same goes for the bank clerk. After a certain age, he starts getting his sums wrong, starts forgetting the names of the bank's clients, can't tell a discount rate from a mortgage rate. Off home, you. Move along, son, you're past it. For a judge, it's quite the opposite. The more ancient and idiosyncratic they are, the higher they get promoted, the classier the jobs they get. You see them up there, little old men like cardboard cutouts, silly wigs on their heads, all capes and ermine, with 2 pairs of glasses on cords around their neck because otherwise they'd lose them. And these characters have the power to wreck a person's life or save it, as and how they want. They hand out life sentences like somebody saying, maybe it'll rain tomorrow. 50 years for you, 30 for you, only 20 for you because I like your face. They make the law and they can do what they like. And they're holy, too. Don't forget, in Italy you can still be done for slander if you say nasty things about judges. In Italy, and in Saudi Arabia. Ah, yes, the judge is the job for me. What a role. What wouldn't I give to be able to play a judge for just once in my life? An appeal court judge would be lovely. Your Honor, this way, please. Silence in court. Please be upstanding for the judge. Oh dear, lost our marbles, have we, sir? I'll let you know if I find them. So this is the setup for the main body of the play. We have this lunatic who creates characters, acts them out with the people around him, and he really wants to play a judge. The reason that this setup works is because Bertozzo gets a phone call. Bertozzo actually leaves, and the maniac takes the phone call. But basically, he learns that a high court judge from Rome is coming to the police station in Milan because they're going to reopen the investigation, the inquest into the death of the anarchist. And so the maniac says, aha, I get to play a judge. So he creates this character. And actually, toward the end of Act 1, Scene 1, we see him creating this character. Like, he decides the idiosyncrasies of this particular judge that he's going to act out. And then he goes upstairs and presents himself to the constable as the high court judge. And he has brought in the superintendent and a character just called Sports Jacket. This is an investigator, a detective, whose distinctive trait is apparently that he wears a sports jacket. And the maniac starts taking them through the events. Now, he's got the file on the interrogation of the anarchist's fall, the various statements that have been made, the inquest report. He's got all of that stuff. He basically took it out of Bertozzo's files in order to play this role. And so the maniac convinces the superintendent, Sports Jacket, and a constable that he is in fact a high court judge, and basically he just plays with them for most of the rest of the play. He goes back and forth between, on the one hand, making them essentially admit their guilt for either driving this anarchist to suicide or, more realistically, for actually throwing him out of the window. He goes back and forth on this. At times, he's essentially setting them up to feel incredibly guilty, like they are in fact responsible. And at times, he's like, no, I'm on your side. Look, we got to get to the truth here so that I can help you. And it is this dramatic shifting back and forth, this almost bipolar approach to how the maniac deals with the police here. And one of the interesting things, he gets the superintendent to explain how their interrogation techniques work. Basically that the police regularly lie to suspects, they threaten them with jail time, they claim that they have incontrovertible evidence, they claim that their associates have betrayed them, etc., etc. All of this, and the superintendent's like, yeah, these are all lies that we use to put pressure on people. And then the maniac immediately starts doing those things. He says here, after Sports Jacket admits that they made up the evidence that they used against the anarchist in the interrogation, the maniac says, well, how very creative. You should take up writing, you two, and you'll probably get the chance. Believe me, plenty of time to write in prison. So, feeling a bit knocked out, eh? Well, I think I should add that down in Rome they have a stack of evidence of major procedural irregularities having been committed by the pair of you. You're done for. The Ministry of Justice has decided that you must be made an example of, and that you must be dealt with the full severity of the law so as to restore the public's lost faith in the police. And he goes on like this for a while. And then at the end of this bit, he's like, yeah, I just made all that up. Rome not only doesn't care, they're positively proud of you. So, again, he's playing with the police, but the thing that's striking about it is that the way the maniac plays with these two police officers is precisely the way that the police play with their suspects. He lies, he makes up evidence, he asserts that certain people have proof of crimes being committed, etc., etc., in exactly the same way that the police admit that they have done to this anarchist. So, again, that's part of the satire here. That's part of the mockery of those in authority. And it gets progressively more sort of insane as this maniac gets further and further into this character, to the point where he even starts rewriting events completely. And by the end of Act 1, the maniac is basically forcing these two police officers, the superintendent and Sports Jacket, to agree that they essentially embraced the anarchist as a comrade in order to make him feel better. Like, he gets the superintendent to agree that, like, he put his hand comfortingly on the anarchist's shoulder when the guy was depressed. And he gets Sports Jacket initially just to admit that he patted the guy's cheek to make him feel better. But then finally it ends with the maniac being like, you even sang his favorite anarchist song with him. And Sports Jacket is like, no, we didn't. We would never sing an anarchist song with him. And then the maniac's basically like, well, if you don't agree that you did this, you're going to go to jail. So it's this weird, like, extortion technique where he basically completely rewrites this sequence of events. But again, what we find out is that there are at least two different versions of events that the police have gone on record with. So we already know at least one of these sets of events is a fabrication. Again, what the maniac does is exactly what the police have done. So that's very, very interesting. In Act 2, enter a journalist. The journalist is basically seeking information about the death of the anarchist. A lot of stuff happens in this act. It gets very, very busy. The maniac changes his identity. He basically says initially, we don't want this journalist to know that I'm a high court judge looking into the death of the anarchist, because then she will conclude that there's something improper. So I'm going to pretend to be this captain of forensics from Rome. Inspector Bertozzo comes in. He doesn't immediately recognize the anarchist, but he knows that he's seen the face. He can't place it. But he also knows the chief of forensics from Rome that the maniac is now pretending to be. So he knows that the maniac is not that person. And so Bertozzo he finally figures out that this is the maniac. He basically spends the entire second act of the play trying to inform the superintendent and Sports Jacket that this is the maniac, and they keep trying to shut him up because they think he's trying to out the Supreme Court judge, or the High Court judge, to the journalist. But in that second act, the other thing that we get that's really, really interesting is a particular philosophy of scandal. We get a sort of ultimately it is a crystallization of the satire of what Fo seems to think is going on with this society. The journalist, the superintendent, and the maniac discuss various police procedures, including the use of police informants, even up to the point where in the anarchist cell that they were investigating, that this anarchist they arrested was part of, the majority of people were either police informants, undercover agents, or right-wing provocateurs whom the police knew about and supported being involved there. There's also meta-theatrical elements where there's this bit here. The superintendent says, in fact, you may be interested to know that we have one or two right here in the audience tonight, as usual. Watch this. That's police informants. Then the stage direction say he claps his hands. We hear a number of voices from different parts of the auditorium. Sir, yes, sir, sir. The maniac laughs and turns to the audience, and he says, "Don't worry, they're all actors. The real ones sit tight and don't say a word." So we've got, again, this satire, this mockery of police corruption and the ways in which the police abuse their authority in order basically to maintain power. But this philosophy really crystallizes in the maniac's explanation of the role of scandal. Because he says here toward the end of the play, the superintendent, so the maniac gives us a little bit, and then the superintendent says, "Surely not. That would be like saying that scandal is the fertilizer of social democracy." And here's where the maniac really explains his philosophy. He says, "Spot on. Manure. Scandal is the fertilizer of social democracy. In fact, I'd go even further. Scandal is the best antidote to the worst of poisons. Namely, when people come to realize what's really going on. When people begin to realize what's going on, we're done for. But look at America, a truly social democratic society." Did they ever try to censor the true facts about the massacres carried out by American troops in Vietnam? No, they did not. It was on the front page of all the papers, photos of women butchered, children massacred, villages destroyed. And do you remember the scandal of the nerve gas? The Americans had manufactured enough nerve gas in the US to wipe out the entire population of the world 3 times over. But did they try to hide the fact? Not a bit of it. In fact, when you turned on the TV, there they were, trains. And where are those trains going? To the seaside. And what are those trains carrying? Nerve gas. It's going to be dumped at sea a few miles off the shoreline. So that supposing there's a little earthquake one day, the containers will crack and the nerve gas will come bubbling up to the surface, glug, 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 and we'll all die. 3 times over. They never tried to hush up these scandals, and they're right not to. That way people can let off steam, get angry, shudder at the thought of it. Who do these politicians think they are? Scumbag generals, murderers. And the more they get angry, and then burp, a little liberatory burp to relieve their social indigestion. This is a really fascinating philosophy because actually it aligns really well with Mistero Buffo, Dario Fo's adaptation of the medieval comic mysteries. Because in the comic mysteries, what happens is you use satire, but then and this is Bakhtin's theory of the carnivalesque, which basically underlines Mistero Buffo. You mock and laugh at the people in authority, religious figures, nobles, aristocracy, etc., etc., and then you can go back about your life. This is the fundamental idea here. In Accidental Death of an Anarchist, Fo claims scandal works the same way. We all get upset about whatever it is. The latest tweet. We get upset about Will Smith punching Chris Rock in the face at the Oscars or whatever it is. And we can go about our lives. We have that bit of scandal to cling to, and that relieves the social pressure. We no longer feel the need to engage in potentially revolutionary activity to right social injustices. So this is part of the Brechtian thing that Fo does. Because again, that's one of the things Brecht is all about. That idea of you use theater to get people to reflect on their own social conditions so that they will work for change. They will work to improve things. And that's what Fo is doing here.